In this video, I'm going to show you how you can turn your traditional paints into fabric-friendly paints and how I turn these dingy pink pants into these fruit-inspired pants. So between having young kids and getting paint all over myself, this is something I find myself doing a lot. So it's not just for like zhuzhing up pants, but also these pants have like some old stains on it. They're not picking up great on camera, but trust me, it's like places I've tried to wash paint out and couldn't quite get it. And so I've decided to paint fruit all over them. The first step, perhaps the most important step, which is trying out your ideas first on paper just to see if it looks the way it does in your head. I'm pretty spur of the moment and I still force myself to do this just to see if I like the way it looks and to change anything that maybe seemed better in my head. Next, I'm using this marker that's designed to specifically come out in the wash and drawing my illustrations on clean pants. Once I have these roughly marked in, I then move on to my next step, which is kind of the foundation of this whole process. Next is kind of the star of the show, and that is the Liquitex fabric medium, as well as my titanium white. This is my normal paints. Like the titanium white is something I paint with all the time in my regular painting practice, and the medium is what takes that paint and transforms it into something that will adhere to fabric. It'll be softer, it's easier to apply to the fabric, kind of the magic sauce of this whole equation. I really like to start out with this white and fabric medium mixture as my base because it teases out the drawing from the coloring in step, and this is something I do in my normal everyday painting practice. I like to keep those steps really separate, but then also I find that it makes the colors a lot more saturated because I'm not competing with the color of my denim. In this case it's pink, so it wouldn't have been so bad, but I paint on my dark denim all the time, and having this white layer is a lifesaver. And the last thing I love about doing this white layer first is it also kind of fills in the fabric so that I feel like in my next step with all the bright colors it doesn't soak in as much, and just texturally it's a lot more pleasant of an experience. And I will note that watching this back, I'm definitely painting over some of the detail that I drew in with my pen, and obviously that can be a bit of a bummer. You don't have to do this step, it's not like required per the instructions of the fabric medium, but because I already illustrated all of these designs out, I can just simply refer back to them. So this is not like you don't have to do this white underpainting, it's just something that I personally find to be really helpful, especially in the next step. Because this is acrylic paint, and also because it is hot here in Texas in the summer, most of this paint dries pretty close to instantly, but I will say after I do this step, I'll give it like an hour to fully dry before I move on to adding the color into this process, aka the best part. Now I'm just using my regular palette that I use for my fine art paintings. You can see here it's just a little stay wet palette, and where for that first under layer of white I used a palette knife to mix the fabric medium in with my traditional paints. You can also just put a pile of the fabric medium in the palette like I have here and sort of mix as you go. This of course brings me to a question that I get asked probably the most when it comes to understanding acrylic painting mediums, which is how much do you add? Like what is the correct ratio? And it really depends on the medium, but specifically for this medium, fabric medium, it says on the bottle it's a 1-to-1 ratio, which means equal parts paint to equal parts fabric medium. So that's pretty straightforward. Now people really get kind of granular with it, or like really in the weeds of like, okay, but how much do I need like a scale to measure it out? And you certainly could. I mean, I always tend to eyeball it, so what looks like about the same amount of medium to the same amount of paint, you I guess suppose like could measure it out. But here's the trick: usually after you do it a few times, you start to get a sense of what the viscosity is, so basically how liquidy or how thick the paint is, when you add in about half of your medium with half of your paint. And then I just kind of aim for that texture as I'm mixing in my medium as I go. The fabric medium in particular I find to be pretty liquidy, and so it makes a viscosity that's more similar to like a soft body paint, so a little runnier than what I'm used to. But I find that this texture works really great for painting on clothes because it kind of sinks into the fabric, and I think it probably helps with why it is able to hold up in the wash. You know, the people who designed it, I'm sure we're thinking of that, but for me as the painter, it also makes it to where it applies a little bit easier, so it's just kind of a win-win all the way around. Earlier this year, I was actually flown out by Liquitex to their headquarters in New Jersey and had a 3-day demo training with them. So I am a Liquitex brand rep. I basically work with them for live demos. I am not getting paid for this YouTube video, nor do I have like affiliate links or I'm earning anything from this, and I really do paint on my clothes regularly, especially my kids who always stain their clothes. So I just throw like a Pokemon on there or something. It's kind of one of my favorite mom tricks for them. But when I was out there training, basically we learned about mediums and how there's some mediums that are effect mediums, so things like the iridescence, which makes your paint kind of shiny and shimmery. And then there's mediums like this, which actually allow you to do something totally different with your acrylic paints. Now you can paint straight onto fabric with your straight from the tube heavy body paints. That's what I use, so that's what I'm using for this example. But the fabric medium mixed in with your traditional paints at that ratio, that 1-to-1 ratio, has been specifically designed and formulated to be soft on the fabric, to hold up to multiple washes, to be stretchy enough to not crack or tear or fade. And of course, is that I don't have to invest in a whole new set of fabric specific paints. That would be such a waste for me because I am a painter. So many of us who are already sort of crafty, or maybe we have our own fine art practices, the idea of just adding in one medium that's designed to help your regular traditional paints be used for something like painting on denim or fabric is just really cool and really helpful. So I will point out that I'm able to do a little bit of blending, and I know a lot of people struggle with that with acrylic paint. It is my main medium, so I have gotten very used to it over the last decade or so. But one thing I'll point out is having that white layer underneath creates sort of a smooth, firmer surface. So I do have a little bit more space to blend. So if you find yourself doing this and you want to be able to blend your colors just a little bit, by having that white layer underneath, it allows me to be able to blend my colors a little bit more. I will say a part of this process that I found to be really helpful, especially as I'm painting all over these pants, is having a piece of palette paper nearby. So when I fold the pants to either switch sides or work on a different leg, I can take all the parts of the pants that I just painted that are kind of gummy and put that palette paper there. That way, until it's fully dry, it doesn't affect any other part of the pants or my table. I did want to take a brief moment to shout out today's video sponsor, which is Not Sorry Art School, an online art school that I created years ago because I had artists who wanted to learn how to paint representationally, whether it was someone who had never picked up a paintbrush before, or even a seasoned career artist who felt like they left art school without learning how to paint representationally. Not to say everyone has to paint perfectly representationally, but rather learning the skills of light and value and form, how to draw and paint accurately, can help you to become a more confident, skilled painter. Take the fruit I'm painting on these pants. Obviously in this video I'm showing you how to use medium to paint on jeans, but if you want to learn to do something even like illustrating, but years and years of painting representationally, that's informed this practice. I'm very proud of Not Sorry Art School. I would recommend being a lifetime member as you get access to all future courses as well as the community feature. And if you'd like to give Not Sorry Art School a test drive, make sure to click on the 7-day bootcamp to get 7 different days of valuable teachings. Click the link below to try that out. So I'm finishing up the pants here. I'm doing the last little bits of adjustments. You can see my palette over to the side has a lot of different colors, and so I'm able to sort of mix as I go, mix on the pants, and by adding in the little bit of the fabric medium to create that perfect texture that I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm able to get lots of different gradients and individualized colors. Here's the palette afterwards. This is always really fun to look at. So unlike other fabric paints, you don't need to heat set this. In fact, the next step is really simple. You're just gonna throw it in the wash. You can see some of the lines left over here. Don't worry, those come out again in that regular typical wash cycle. You can dry as normal too. I tend to line dry things because I'm in Texas and our outside is basically a heater. But in this clip, I have washed these pants about 3 times after I did my initial painting, and you can still see that they're beautiful, it's soft, it's flexible, and so far it's not fading. Maybe I'll do an update in like 30 washes to see how it goes, but they're pretty amazing. I'm really proud of myself. This was really fun to make. I've worn these around and gotten some compliments. They certainly stand out in small town Texas. But thank you for watching. Stay tuned, and I'll talk to you guys next week in the next video.